What's going on, YouTube? It's Flipacoin here. It's been a turbulent 2 weeks for the West, and I'd like to talk a little bit today about North America as a region and how we fare competitively. So first off, let's talk Korea. So not looking to beat a dead horse here because it's kind of been talked about by players, news sources, the community as a whole. Everyone's kind of said their piece on the matter. But essentially, in Korea, the only team that showed up and was able to keep up was Cloud9. All the other Western teams really just couldn't hang with Korea/China. So, granted, I'm not trying to make excuses for my region, but there may have been some factors that contributed to this. So, first and foremost, NA doesn't scrim nearly as much as Korea and China, which is their fault. You know, that's on them. They're not practicing to the same extent that that region does. Not necessarily an excuse, but a factor. So this may lead to a wider skill margin between their regions and the Western regions, which you could account for Europe as well. They did no better than NA did. So on top of that, you have travel. You're traveling 8,000 miles for some players from North America to go to Korea. You may be jet lagged. There's literally a picture of Zuna napping in his booth because presumably he was that tired from traveling. It's a lot on a collective of 5. I believe it's a full day trip to Korea from certain parts of North America. So it's a little much. Another big factor is home advantage for Korean and even you could argue Chinese players to some extent. So both Niventic and C9 have a good amount of LAN experience thus far, less so Niventic, but as 5 individual players they have good LAN experience, but as a collective since the Bob Ross days, they haven't played that many LAN events. But to be 8,000 miles from home in what's essentially esports mecca can probably tilt you. And it didn't necessarily seem like they were super tilted or anything, but Niventic and Cloud9 didn't look entirely on their game compared to what they could have showed. So, long story short, no Western teams qualify for top 4, everyone returns home, and despite only Niventic and C9 competing, post-event swaps happen. So that's what I really wanted to talk about, and that's roster swaps. So to catch you up, Soldier is retired from HOTS competitively, which bums me out. He has had a pretty quality career for the time he's been around. He's been here since the 2 Arc days. He's the Tempo Storm OG, and he's one of North America's first true talents. And it's a shame that he couldn't claim a world championship title or even just a regional championship title. But, unfortunately, Tempo has been plagued with roster swap and kind of like turbulent changes. There was the original Tempo roster that was disassembled. You had the new Tempo roster, and now that's kind of not falling apart, but it didn't perform as expected, and now they're losing players. So unfortunately, he didn't have a full shot in terms of like the surrounding company to be the world champion. But he had a quality run, especially being around for as long as he was. And I not only respect him a ton, but appreciate his dedication to sticking around for as long as he has, because I know there are plenty of other players who have not. So that's that. He's retiring. Hopefully we see him on a analyst or caster desk in the future. Hopefully he stays involved with the game in some organization or in some way. Regardless, he'll be missed. Urho released from Niventic. That's the other big news. He's released for attitude problems. And it was supposedly put to a vote that, from what I've read, Zuna and Kenma opposed, but otherwise he was voted off the team, which is kind of crazy. That's a big change to just come back from Korea, and although you didn't necessarily do all that well, you're just stripped from the team, because Urho is kind of looked at as a quality player. He's known to be very good. He's kind of listed as an NA star of sorts. And Urho went to Reddit and admitted to his poor behavior. He did a whole AMA, and he pretty much amounted it to passion and doesn't make it right, but he can't always control his emotions, and he's going to work on improving it going forward. A good general saying on the issue, but he also made a point in saying that he felt his team wasn't as dedicated as he was, and that provoked some of the potential behavior attitude problems that he was talking about. An example that he gave was McIntyre supposedly going on vacation before they had to go to Korea, so they didn't have enough time to practice and scrim. Kind of impacted their performance, or so he felt. Regardless, that's neither here nor there. It doesn't really matter. He's now scrimming with the top team. That's yet to be announced. Big impact, Biggie, after a short successful run with Team Blaze, after already leaving Panda Global, he has left to join Niantic in place of Erho, which isn't a shocker. Big Impact has been on the rise. He's been one of the more notable up-and-coming players in his time in the scene, and given the unfortunate changes that have gone on with roster, or potentially fortunate on how you want to look at it, depends where you stand on the issue. Because of these changes, it just makes sense that he shifts in, and we'll see how Niantic shifts around their roster at all in terms of role and position to accommodate him. So lastly, today, if I'm correct, it may have been yesterday, but I'm pretty sure it's today, 4/7/2016, Shrey has, or Shrey, however you want to say it, has left Tempo Storm today, which was a shocker. And that leaves Tempo Storm with 3 players since Soldier retired, which is kind of a big deal. Shrey is a notable player, and although New Tempo didn't necessarily find success in the spring, right now the only clear directions for him to go are either to a new organization, a bigger organization to kick someone out and take him up because he is good, he's a quality player that is there, or he kind of remains a free agent right now. If he wants to continue playing competitively, right now, his avenue, or probably his best bet, is find an emerging team or start up a team, kind of like how Bob Ross did. Because unless he wants to go to Blaze, there currently just isn't a lot of room in the remaining top teams. And also, important to note about Blaze, I think they've been showing up a lot more lately. Beyond their kind of like cheesy, out of the ordinary strats, the general response to Blaze lately has been they're improving. Things have been good for them in their recent showings. But unfortunately, as they've publicly made a point in saying, Shadow Smile did make a point in saying this on Reddit recently when Biggie left, unfortunately they can't always keep up at a fiscal level with bigger organizations. So that makes it hard for them to pick up someone like Shrey, potentially, just on the basis that he presumably was receiving some kind of compensation playing for Tempo Storm, so to now go over to Blaze and potentially be offered less, that might deter him from taking an offer like that, despite the fact that I think Blaze would be a good place for him to go right now, at least in my own opinion, because I do think they have a lot of potential in this upcoming summer qualifier. So the last thing I want to talk about is the impact that roster swaps have had on North American Heroes of the Storm in the past couple of months. Roster swaps are nothing new. They happen in every game, every esport. It's a very normal thing. But the NA scene is hurting a little bit from the way roster swaps are conducted in our region for this game, in my personal opinion. Now, as opposed to rosters finding stability and a consistent 5 players and growing synergies, people are often getting swapped around every 2 to 3 or so months, whether it be a few players or nearly full rosters. You look at like Cognitive post BlizzCon, I think they gutted everyone but Glaurung, and then someone came back if I remember right. I don't remember 100%, but you get my point. Initially, they like got rid of the entire team, and despite understanding that sometimes players just aren't the right fit, as well as the fact that sometimes attitudes and clashing heads get in the way, we're not going to be able to breed top talent, like, an example, MVP Black, until North America develops stable footing. Now, just going to whip out a quick stop sign right here, because I have a feeling I'm going to be hit with a lot of comments for that one. Well, MVP Black picked up Rich 4 months ago, and Korean swap rosters a lot too, and this is all true. And again, it goes back to my whole statement about how roster swaps are normal. But put Rich aside for a second, you look at the other 4 members of the team. They've all been playing together for a year, if not more. So that gives them a lot of time for those 4 players to really click with each other and know how to run their team. Their synergy is there. So when they bring a player in, it isn't as hard for them to find footing as a 5, because you have 4 people who can help that new player acclimate to the setting of their team. So that's the difference. It's not every 2 to 3 months someone's being dropped in and out like in North America. Rich was added after MVP Black was long-term established, at least for what this game is, or at least for what their roster was. Now, talent is important. and being a quality player is important. But in the most team-oriented MOBA on the market, it's crucial for rosters to grow as a collective, which again, MVP Black has had the time to do. And also, I don't want to glaze over the fact that everyone on MVP Black is a phenomenal player. So that also adds to their success. It's not only just that they've had time to master their synergy and become a great collective force, they're all very good too. And NA is usually weak on both of those fronts, or one or the other. A team is full of great players, but their synergy is bad, or a team synergy is great, but the players lack in talent. So those are kind of the issues that we're running into as far as that comparably. I would say there's a definite correlation to success and how long teams have to consistently work on their roster as a 5 without having anyone get swapped out unless it's for really necessary reasons, not just because a more talented player is a free agent and can swap a role. Now, look at former Kings of the Blades, now known as Guster Bust. They're on the rise, and they're a team of rookies who pretty much have come to the surface since the Spring Regional looking pretty good. Now, I know they haven't had much showing since the shift of names. They haven't had too much competitive showing since then, but they've been the same roster, to my knowledge, since the beginning. I did a little looking up. It's been the same 5 players. The only person who has left their staff, aside from the obvious big swap in organization, because whatever that fucking shithead did, they got rid of a coach. So the same players competing have been the same 5 since we first saw them debut as Kings of the Blade. And despite their lack of success at the Spring Regional, I think if they keep at it and stay with this current roster and don't swap anyone out and don't, reach for better talent just because someone is a free agent, I think they will very quickly become a contender for top teams if they aren't already, because again, we haven't seen all that much from them recently. You look at the upcoming DreamHack qualifier. What are the big teams right now that are intact? You have Cloud9, Cognitive, and Niantic, who still need to get comfortable with Big Impact because they have yet to play anything competitively with him. I know they've been scrimming and such, but scrims doesn't always mean success. Blaze will hopefully show up despite the fact that they need a sub, but their team's been, a good chunk of it's been focused on Heroes of the Dorm, so who knows if they'll actually be there to play. What that means is there's a lot of room for teams like Guster Bust and other amateurs and up-and-comers to potentially make a mark for themselves, potentially secure a spot for that regional, for DreamHack, and to prove that there is new talent brewing in North America, or that there hopefully is. So in closing, I'm not a manager, I don't oversee any organizations, but I think it's crucial to give teams time to develop. You look at all other esports, most of the time, the case is the teams that are most successful have a lot of time to develop, or they're at least given a season block to develop. There is not very rarely, but infrequently scenarios where just because a player is performing poorly or a player is performing better and can be swapped in, it's very rare that someone just gets blatantly dropped over that and replaced on a talent basis. It's about growing synergies. It's about giving the competitive scene time to blossom. Amateur teams get time to grow and get better as 5. Players get time to improve. It's all about giving them time. Everyone wants HOTS to be this tangible esport right now. Everyone wants HOTS to be League of Legends right now. And I feel a lot of people act as if it's already there. But when you have teams that just can't compete globally because there's constant roster issues and constant swapping and not enough time for synergies to develop and not enough time for teams to forge their real actual legacies, at least in their own region, without falling apart every 3 to 4 months, we are not going to hit League of Legends status anytime soon, or Dota status, or whatever other MOBA on the market you want to compare it to. That's just my 2 cents on the matter. I think I've pretty much pushed the idea as much as possible. The TLDR is synergy over talent 95% of the time. Let teams grow, let teams stay as 5. Don't just swap people out because someone's a great player and they're a free agent. All that good stuff. If you like this video, please hit it with a thumbs up. If you disliked it, hit it with a thumbs down, but tell me why in a comment so that way at least I know. And until next time, it's been Flipacoin. Thanks so much, guys.